another great episode of Go Vote Annapolis, which is sponsored by Action Annapolis. And I'm your host, Carmel Brown. And today we're located in the great Ward 8, and we have the pleasure of having our guest today, Mr. Arnett. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
You picked a great location. Would you mind letting us know what's important about this location and what it means to you?
Yes, so this was the fire station for Eastport before Eastport became part of the city in 1951, and I thought it was a good place to start for a number of reasons. One, we want to support our firefighters, but two, we also want to support our volunteer firefighters who really get a lot of money to buy equipment for the city. So I wanted to give them a shout out by picking this location.
Great choice. So for the people that don't know you, can you give us a bit about your background and who you are and tell us about yourself?
Sure, so I'm a professional health economist. I worked for 32 years for the federal government, retired as a senior executive. Had a fabulous career. I worked with the Clinton Health Reform Team, up close and personal with them, and that was fun. And did a lot of work in terms of telling people the amount of healthcare spending that they're doing each year.
Great. So also, can you tell us about your history with the city and how long you've lived here, and what political activities and social organizations do you associate yourself with?
Yeah, so I've lived in the city for 20 years now.
Okay.
I got involved almost immediately with the Eastport Civic Association, soon became a member of the board, and then was president for 2 years. I've also been involved with the Eastport Business Association, a very active group here. Of course, the fun group, the Maritime Republic of Eastport, and I'm here because of my sailing activity. So I'm a member of the Eastport Yacht Club, and of the Annapolis Yacht Club, and an honorary member of the Eastport Yacht Club. Throughout my entire life, I've been involved in public life. I was in the student government at University of Maryland, and everywhere I've lived, I've been part of the community associations.
Nice. So with that great resume and all of the things that you've been through, what do you feel like is your greatest strengths for governing the city of Annapolis, and what do you feel like is some of your weaknesses?
So my strength is my experience. You're not taught how to be an alderman. You have to learn it on the job. And it is a complicated job. It's a $152 million multi-product business. You have to know the business, you have to know the code, and you have to know the people. You need to know your colleagues on the council, and you need to know the people that you work with on the staff. I am, I think, unabashedly a thought leader on the council. I'm one of the people that my colleagues come to talk about various issues. So leadership is an important aspect. And finally, dedication. This is a hard job, and it takes a lot of time. And you need to be willing to do that.
So in the age of social media and technology, how do you plan on communicating with your constituents?
Well, first of all, I prefer face-to-face.
Okay.
And that's why here in this building, I have town hall meetings on a regular basis. I also communicate through my email. Anyone who asks for it, I send out an email twice a month telling them what's on the city council agenda, telling them the points of interest that are other bits of information for what's going on in the community. But most importantly, I tell them how I plan to vote on legislation. We're a representative democracy, and I represent 5,000 people. And I think they need to know how I plan to vote for them. And I give them an opportunity to come back to me about what they think is right or wrong about my position, and I adjust to that.
Can you briefly tell us what covers the area of Ward 8 for the people who aren't aware?
Yeah, it starts up at Warren Drive and comes down Bay Ridge, and we're bounded by both Back Creek and Spa Creek, all the way down to Horn Point, down at the tip, right? And that's actually at the Severn River.
And speaking of skills, why do you feel like you're the best candidate to win this position?
Well, again, I think it's because of my experience, my leadership, and my dedication to the job. And I will repeat, it's a tough job. And it's a job that really takes some acquisition of knowledge, both of the code, but also of the people, all the players. And the players are the most important thing. The city staff are the ones that deliver city services. And you need to know them, you need to know how to work with them. And that takes a while to get acquainted with all those people. It's 676 people. It's a lot of people to get to know.
That's actually a great segue to my next question, talking about getting acquainted to people. So if you are elected, how would you describe your leadership style?
Well, I think my leadership style is to receive input, listen to people, listen to all sides. I think I demonstrated that last night at the city council. We had a very controversial issue on short-term rentals, and I started my discussion by saying I've listened to what everybody had to say, and I've tried to synthesize it, and I go from there to lead into the points that I make. I also am data-driven. I believe that we should be making decisions based on facts, not on assumptions or feelings. And so I think that's one of the things I bring to the council is the fact that I want to know what is actually going on, not what I suppose is going on.
So with your wants and your know-how and your abilities, what do you feel like is the best committee for your talents?
Well, the ones I'm on. I chair the Finance Committee, I'm on the Rules and City Government Committee, and I'm on the Environmental Matters Committee. And that covers all of my areas of focus. And I've been on them for a while now. I know what to do, and I know what the issues are.
So in the life of any alderperson or elected official, you're faced with a lot of ward and city issues. In your eyes, what are the top 3 political issues, with one of those issues being in your ward, and how would you plan on fixing it?
Oh, there's a lot more than 3, but specific to the ward, I'd call it the street issues, which are traffic, speeding, parking, sidewalk, and potholes. That's what I get a lot of calls on. Then there's the noise issues, gunfire being one of them, and public safety is certainly an important issue in the ward. And so those are things that I get a lot of calls about. I do get a lot of calls. This ward is very environmentally sensitive, so I get a lot of calls about trees being cut, things going into the creeks. The big 4 issues in the city that take up a lot of our time as alderpersons are environment, public safety, finance, and land use and development. A lot of last night's city council meeting was dealing particularly with land use and development. So those are very important issues. They're complicated, and there's issues where we have a lot on our legislative agenda to be dealing with, and there's more work to be done in the next term.
Some of the issues, or one of the issues that I've also heard of, are disparities in housing. How would you plan on rectifying that, and also adding a little bit of diversity to your ward?
Right, so that is a very controversial issue in a ward that is largely single-family residents. Very little of the missing middle. We have a condominium right over there. We have some development that's going on at the Eastport Shopping Center. And those are things that work their way through. Remember, it is the private sector that brings the housing, and the private sector responds to economic incentives. The things I'm working with Alderman Gay are to try to do the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and build that up so that we can help people get into housing that they wouldn't ordinarily be able to get into. That's a very nascent kind of thing. The other thing that we've had is the moderately priced dwelling units. So when a developer comes in and they want to put in a big project, they have to give 10% of that project to low income and affordable housing. The other thing is we've got to work very closely with the Housing Authority. They're in big financial trouble, and the buildings are deteriorating. There are vacancies in those buildings, and I, along with, again, Alderman Gay, have worked on a community organization. We've gotten a grant that is helping the Housing Authority plan for the redevelopment of Eastport Terrace and Harbor House. There's a lot of housing there, and there's a lot of housing that needs to be improved.
And speaking on Alderman Gay and also the Housing Authority and collaboration, can you speak to us about how important it is to collaborate with others when it comes to maintaining a ward?
So, that's a very interesting question. A few years ago, I did a town hall where I asked people to tell me what their most important priorities were, and I figured it was going to be finances and taxes and gun safety. Number 1 priority was the relationship of the community with the Housing Authority. I felt very good about that, but I was surprised. I came in thinking that the community was at odds with the Housing Authority, but they are very concerned about them, as am I, and I think that we need to be concerned about them, and we need to make sure that the rising tide floats all boats.
And speaking of concerns, we have a few community concern questions
Sure.
that we'd love to present and hear
All
your
right.
opinion on. First resident says, what would you do to ensure that planning and zoning department balances the needs of development, which helps economic growth with the needs of residents, taxpayers, environmental concerns, and Annapolis lifestyle?
Yes, and so that is a tension that is always there. There is a general resistance to change. And I think it's fair to say that there's some distrust by the community of our planning and zoning department. One of the legislation that I have done is to require a pre-application meeting between a prospective developer and the community. Tell the community before they even submit their application what it is they plan to do. I also have legislation in on community benefit agreements where the subset of the community can meet with the developer, talk to them about specific issues, and talk to them, more importantly, about ways that the developer can help the community. And so they may not like something, but they may get something in exchange. And finally, I have legislation in to create an administrative hearing officer, which I believe takes all of these land use decisions from behind closed doors into a public setting with a professional hearing officer where the staff will continue to do what they're doing and make a recommendation to the hearing officer. The applicant will put in their application and make their case, and the citizens in an open forum on the record will be able to present their issues or support. There's a lot of support for the Eastport Shopping Center development, as controversial as it's been.
Next question is, why can't the city find a way to keep non-residents from parking in Lower Eastport during events like Blue Angels and 4th of July? These traffic jams block driveways and make it difficult for emergency vehicles to access the streets. What is your opinion on that?
We have to recognize we live in a city and we have some fantastic attractions. Those 4th of July fireworks were fabulous. Blue Angels are always exciting, and people are going to want to come here, and we need to be good neighbors. We need to be willing to share and put up with some inconvenience on a couple of days of the year. So a balance, I think. We need better signage, better controls, but we also need to be better neighbors and accept that there are going to be days when our lives are going to be complicated, but that's because we live in such a great place.
And my last question from resident number 3 is, what will you do to support and encourage general types of businesses in Eastport, not just restaurants? Many small businesses are minority owned and are vital to Eastport's economy. Some need startup help. How could you help out in that matter?
So let's talk about what I've already done. I've already been involved in developing the the Office of Economic Development. Stephen Rice and Hope Stewart, they're really good emissaries, and part of the legislation that I was a sponsor of emphasized women and minority businesses. And we have grants that we give people, but more importantly, those guys have a Friday morning, once a month, Friday morning meeting with business representatives where they talk about business issues and they talk about business solutions. Now, do we do enough? No. I mean, obviously, we can do more. And we need to do a better job. I think some of the things that we need to do a better job of are getting very prominent on the website, the city website, where you can go to get what kind of help. So there's always room for improvement, and I think that's one of the areas where we need to improve.
I'm hearing that we have a great spot to check out next here in your ward and get to know you a little bit more and about your policies and your vision.
Well, thank you. It's good to talk to you as well.
No problem.
So we're here at Peerless Wrens, which represents Old Guard Esport, the social club for African Americans, largely males, largely athletes. But it also was a place where Mike Bush, our Speaker of the House, played ball. We have an old pub over here owned by a prominent African American woman in the community. And then we have Homes for America over here, which is part of the new affordable housing kind of thing. And we're in really the heart of Eastport. We're by the water, we're by Back Creek. So I just thought this was an ideal location to sum up a lot of the things that make Eastport and Ward 8 what it is.
I think it's a great location to talk about our diversity portion of the interview. So can you describe in a little bit more detail the ethnic and racial makeup of this area? What are the specific issues that are relating to the demographic makeup of the ward, and how do you address those issues?
Sure. All right. So Eastport started out largely as a fishing village. It was fishermen that worked the waters. And gradually it became a locus. So McNasby's, the oyster shucking place over here. But gradually it became recognized as a place that's very close to downtown. Houses were relatively cheap. And eventually people moved in here to be in Annapolis, which they all love. We all love Annapolis, be close to it, but be in a single family community. But it's like everything, economics wins out and prices go up and people can no longer afford to be here. It's called gentrification. There's no reason to mince about that word. And that is what's happened. So now composition of Eastport is probably 85% white, wealthy people. And there are still a lot of old guard black families. Solomon, trying to think of her first name now, lives over here on 2nd Street. And there are a number of people that are part of the old community. A lot of the black churches are still here. So the church that Sheila Finlayson belongs to is just down the corner on 2nd Street. But it has been part of the whole evolution that's happening throughout the country. Desirable communities attract people with wealth, and they change. They change back too. I lived on Capitol Hill for a long time, and Capitol Hill was always thought of being black, but really about to 1955, it was a very white community. There were a lot of people that worked on the Capitol building and in the Capitol building. And then there was the white flight to the suburbs. And then with the gas crisis, there was the movement back in. So there's a sort of an ebb and surge of things, and it's driven by economics.
One thing that intrigues me about this area is the beautiful landscape of water in our backdrop. What are your views on water access in this area to the public, and how do you, or if you plan on expanding any areas for public access?
So I'm a huge proponent of it. Last night I introduced a resolution to try to protect water access at South Annapolis Yachting Center, along with Alderman Savage and Alderman Gay. I'm very heavily involved in the access at Wells Cove alongside Blue Heron. And I believe that we need to not only maintain, but increase the amount of water access. We really have to protect from being walled off. So only the wealthy are on the water, and the rest of us have to sort of peek over their fences. And that's just not a healthy community.
What would you do to advance understanding in your ward and the city around race, ethnicity, and sexual orientation?
Well, I think that is something that comes with the territory for the aldermen. First of all, you need to understand it yourself. And then you need to make sure that when you're doing legislation and doing policy development, that you understand that there's a whole community. So those are the things that I try to do. I learned a lot about the racial community in Annapolis from Kenny Kirby. We became good friends. I'm learning from Dewan. You need to listen to people. You need to be empathetic and understand where they're coming from and what their needs are. And I'd say the number one job of an alderperson is to find that balance so that all of these different needs and desires can be meshed and balanced. So I think I'm a pretty active listener. I've paid attention to what my colleagues on the council have talked to me about, and I plan to continue to do that.
Well, I admire your history of the city and your ward, and also your vision for the future. But if you could just give the people a 2-minute pitch on why we should elect you and the importance of electing you into Ward 8 into our city of Annapolis.
So I'll return to the three main themes. I have the experience. You have to learn how to be an alderman. There's no training for that. It's on-the-job training. So, and it is a complicated, multifaceted business, the city, and you need to know all aspects of it, and you need to know all the players who work for the city, both in city government and on city staff. So that's the experience part. Then you have to have leadership. You have to be able to take that knowledge and direct it into legislation. We're a legislative body, we're a representative body, and we need to be doing legislation that is going to take advantage of the experience and lead to improvements for the city. Everything can improve, and you need to work on that. And then finally, as I've said before, being alderman is hard work. It takes a lot of time, a lot of dedication. You have to really want to do that. And I feel that I'm willing to make the commitment for another 4 years. I think I can bring a lot of things to the table, and I want to do that. I still enjoy the job, and I want to keep it.